Hello everyone. Welcome to Beyond the Scoreboard. I'm your host, Michael Lyons, and we got a special guest for today's episode. First transitional episode out of the normal sequence of just listening. We got some video and we got a guest coming from Raleigh, North Carolina, NC State's finest, Erik Rottingen, and Spurs super fan.
Hey, how's it going? Thanks for having me, Mike.
Yeah, of course. And so
Glad to
today
be here.
we're doing a Spurs offseason guide. But first, before we get into that, playoff basketball is still going on. We're in the heat of the Eastern Conference and Western Conference finals. We're going to start talking about the playoffs first, move into reaction from the Spurs season because a lot did happen this year. And
Yep.
then we'll get into the Spurs offseason guide, what you can look forward to draft wise and just everything that might happen this offseason. So first off, playoffs, Erik. We're in the key to the Eastern and Western Conference Finals. We got the
hmm
we got the Knicks versus Pacers tonight in Indiana. Pacers are up 2-0 right now. What's your reaction to that series so far?
Yeah, so obviously big game today. If the Pacers are able to snatch that, they're up 3-0. Series is probably almost sealed up after that. But um, yeah, so first two games, I think the Knicks should have probably won both of them, honestly. Um, yeah, this third one's a little interesting, if you're looking at like the away records. It would actually like it seems to favor the Knicks, honestly.
Yeah.
But so honestly, I feel like the Knicks are going to be able to steal this one and kind of make the series a little more interesting. But I do think the Pacers are going to win the series in general. I think they're going to win in six.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I think game three is very telling for a couple things. Pacers play with so much pace. They've been kind of running the Knicks off the court at times this series. Game
hmm
three is where tiredness and fatigue is going to start showing for the New York Knicks, I feel like. And
Yep.
Pacers are built for this. Like, whoever they bring in the game, they always bring energy and effort. And this is partially because of Tom Thibodeau, or not Tom Thibodeau, Rick Carlisle being an amazing head coach. Obviously, you know him from the Mavericks Spurs rivalries in the playoffs from
Yep.
back with Dirk and Tim Duncan. But I mean, he just has everybody on the Pacers just really flying around the court. All of them are playing at their best. I mean, Tyrese Halliburton didn't have an amazing game too, but Siakam held it down throughout. And the Knicks, I mean, game two, game one especially, which talked about that on the last episode for me. Game one,
Crazy
your
game.
reaction to that just complete fall off and collapse in the fourth quarter by the New York Knicks.
You want my reaction to that?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so I was watching it with my whole family. And so my mom and my sister are both Knicks fans. And then my dad and I are both Pacers. Well, my dad's a Pacers fan because he's a big Reggie Miller fan. So it was kind of divided household there.
Mm,
And I was actually doing a puzzle, kind of half watching the game, and because it was like what 14 points with like they were down 14 with like 3 minutes left or something. I kept hearing Neesmith after a three-pointer. I'm looking up. I'm like, dang, it's eight now. And then Neesmith hits like five or six in a row.
mm.
And and then what Karl Anthony Towns missed that free throw. I'm like, dude, they actually might do it. And it was just like so, I don't know how to say, like resonant of Reggie Miller kind of with like how he retreated back to the 3-point line and
Mm.
shot it. I knew as soon as he hit it though, it was gonna go in. Even if it hit the back iron, I'm like, wait, this is actually gonna go in, and it did. And it would have been like the perfect fairy tale kind of ending if that was actually a three, but no, it goes in overtime. And I thought the Knicks were gonna run away with it, honestly, after they got like four and they were about to, and they got like that controversial goaltending
Yeah, I
kind
mean,
of thing. But
that goaltend, obviously, if you look back on it, it is a goaltending. But
hmm
from the position of the refs, the rim as well, you got the ball here, rim here, ref standing over here to call. He can't see.
Yeah.
And that's a bang bang play. Yes, if you look from behind the glass, that camera angle obviously is going to show you. But if
Yeah.
the Knicks fans didn't see that, I mean, it's still up in the air if it's a goaltending.
Yeah, in real time, I didn't think it was. I just thought it was a block
Yeah,
too.
real time, I didn't think it was a goaltending. I mean, looking back on it now, yeah, it was a goaltending. There's a lot of missed calls. The Knicks
Mm,
fans know 100% about that. Tim Hardaway foul in game 3 of the Detroit series. Should have been a foul, but it didn't get called.
yep.
Foul-
Yep.
Calls just go your way and they don't go your way.
It's part of the game.
Bang plays. And for the Knicks, you should have never been in overtime at that point. Obi Toppin
Yeah.
fouled on the other end on that dunk. That's
Right.
and that game's completely over at that point. But I mean, like I've been saying on my shows and my episodes, I mean, I think the Pacers are the better team in the clutch. I said
Mm,
on Wednesday Night Sports Flash, which I do, I told James, Jackson, and Ashley, I said Tyrese Halliburton will take the crown of most clutch player from Jalen Brunson in this series. And game 1, I think he did. Game 2, he was struggling a little bit to get around Karl Anthony Towns on those switches. He didn't have an amazing game, but Siakam, like I said, held it down. And I mean,
right.
Pacers stole 2 games in New York. Tony Bradley, of all people, is playing minutes for the Indiana Pacers right now. Thomas Bryant played game 1. No Tony Bradley. Then Tony Bradley goes in and he slowed down Mitchell Robinson a little bit. I mean, Mitchell Robinson's been one of the best players for the Knicks all postseason. And I brought up this conversation to Daniel, our Knicks fan that we know, about Tom Thibodeau. What do you think about Tom Thibodeau? Do you think the Knicks should go in a different direction this offseason? Say if they get eliminated by the Pacers.
Yeah, so I'll tell you right now, I don't like Tom Thibodeau at all. I don't like the way he does his rotations with like playing like one or two guys a game. And it's not always the same two guys either that he
Mhm.
brings off the bench. I just really don't like that. And yeah, if I were the Knicks, I don't know, I'd probably move on, but
I mean, you got
maybe that's kind of how they want to play, like giving Jalen like a guy like Jalen Brunson like kind of kind of just like the whole offense is kind of centered around him almost, and then Karl Anthony Towns as well. Like it's kind of just centered around their superstars,
mm.
and maybe that's how we want to play, but I don't like it at all, to
Yeah, I
be
mean,
honest.
if
And
the
there
Knicks,
it gets to a point like later on in this like the series where if they were getting to like a game seven, bro, they're gonna be like exhausted.
yeah, they're gonna be gassed.
And a team like the Pacers, I feel like can blow the doors off them in game seven if it ever gets to that point, just because of the fitness.
Yeah, and I mean, one of the biggest things with Tibbs in this whole postseason run is there's been questionable rotations, like you said. Game in the Pistons series, there was a game where JB and Josh Hart were both on the bench in the final 3 minutes. Tried to tried to check them in, but there was no stoppage to ever get them in the game, and that's where
Yep.
the Knicks lost that game. Then the
Yep.
Celtics series comes along. They're up by 30. Jalen Brunson, obviously their starters are all out there with like 6 minutes left. Say one of them gets injured with 6 minutes left in a game that's already over. This like that Celtics series looks completely different. They probably don't even make it to the Pacers series. And then game 2, campaign is in the fourth quarter. Jalen
Hmm.
Brunson sitting out. Now, obviously, you got to give your guy Jalen Brunson a break. You
Yep.
get that media timeout at the 8 minute mark, and then you come back and campaign is still in the game, and Jalen Brunson isn't in the game. I mean, I thought that was terrible coaching by Tibbs. I didn't like his rotations at all. OG and Mikhail, they're kind of flipping and flopping when they're good and when they're bad. OG will have a stretch of
Yeah. It's
seven
never
minutes.
both at the same time.
Like OG will
Yes.
have a stretch of 7 minutes where he's like amazing. Same thing for Mikhail. But then there's three quarters where they don't give you like anything on the offensive end.
Yeah.
Cat, I mean, he has his moments. but then he's shooting these super deep threes. And in the Celtics series, he wasn't making any of them. Pacers series to start, he's making them, but it's going to be tough for the Knicks to win this series. I saw a stat that the Pacers are 0-3 on games they play during the Indy 500. Indy 500 is today,
Yep.
so we'll see if they can
Gonna be
break
interesting.
the curse, but I think the Knicks will steal a game tonight. I think Pacers win game four. Knicks go back Madison Square Garden game five. They get that dub, and then the Pacers win it in six. I've been saying Pacers in six this whole series, and I'm still gonna stick with it. What about you, Eric? How
Yep.
many games do you think is gonna be?
Yep. Like I said, Pacers in six as well. I think I think the Knicks are gonna steal it, but I think the Pacers will wrap it up. And I like I said earlier, like the later games will be more difficult on the Knicks because they're subbing and everything like that.
Mhm. All right. Talk about the Eastern Conference Finals, Western Conference Finals. Thunder are up 2-1 right now on the Minnesota
Hmm.
Timberwolves, but we saw the Timberwolves blow them out last night.
Yeah.
What was your
Yep.
reaction to game three and the whole series as a whole so far?
Yeah, well, leading up to that game three, I'm like, I think the Thunder are gonna win this, but I don't think it's gonna be a sweep because you have a guy like Anthony Edwards he's just gonna take over a game,
Mm,
honestly. And I think every single series with him, you're guaranteed at least one or two games where he just takes over and he wins the game for the Timberwolves.
mm.
And I think we kind of saw that last night. Him and Julius Randle were
Yeah,
on
they were
another
nasty
level.
tonight.
And yeah, so I think it's still going how I expected it. I think the Thunder will probably win in six, maybe five even.
Mm,
But I just think the Thunder are too overpowering.
mm. Yeah, I think this series could either be really quick or it's going to stretch to 7 games due to Anthony Edwards being an amazing competitor, not wanting to
Hmm.
quit on his team. Um, I think game four is going to be really telling because I think if the Thunder get up 3-1 in this series, I think they'll just close it out in OKC in game five.
Right. Yeah.
And but if Minnesota could extend this, I could see them beating OKC in a game seven. I mean, like you said, Anthony Edwards, probably one of the most skilled players we have in the NBA right now, has that
Hmm.
Kobe and Jordan mindset. And that's going to be really tough to beat. But the Thunder, too, are such an amazing team. They've been so dominant all year long. It's just the others for the Timberwolves that I'm worried about keeping up what they did in game three. The bench was amazing. Terrence Shannon Jr. had 15 off the bench, 9 in the first half. He had an amazing game, the rookie out of Illinois. Naz Reid finally was hitting his shots. Dante finally had a pretty solid game. Nikhil Alexander Walker's been
Yeah.
okay this series. And then Julius Randle had a good bounce back game from game two where he had 6 points in the fourth quarter and or no, game two, he didn't even play in the fourth quarter. So he had amazing rebound to not being even in the rotation in the fourth quarter of a game that wasn't completely over at that point. But yeah, this is a tough series to still tell. I think game four will give us that like Thunder up 3-1. They're probably going to close it out in five. But Minnesota comes out again, beats OKC like they did last night. I mean, this series could extend and be longer than the Pacers Knicks series, which after the first 2 games, it looked tough that this series would even go past 4 or 5 games. Now,
Right.
I mean, so playoffs, we've seen some teams come and go. What was your most surprising team of the playoffs?
Yeah, right back to the Eastern Conference or the Western Conference, sorry, Minnesota has been my surprise team. They started the season, I think like one win in 10 or it was some
Yeah,
crazy like
they really had
they had some
they had a
catching up to do.
tough they had a really tough start to the year.
Yeah.
Same thing with the Pacers though. Both of those teams had a really good rebound. But keep going, Eric.
Hmm. Yeah, so honestly, I expected them to lose to the Lakers. It being a six seed, obviously the kind of against them, and the Lakers were a team that were on the rise with Luka Doncic joining them. And yeah, some questionable decision making by JJ Redick there. And I think that's kind of what opened it up for the Timberwolves to kind of take that series. And they did it in five, which I kind of surprised me as well. I thought it was going to go to at least six or seven. And then the Warriors next. I think a little fortunate that Curry got injured. I'll say that.
Yeah.
But I mean, hey, it's still a team, and they got four in a row after Curry got out, which is impressive in itself. So they've kind of been the most surprising team for me. I think they're the lowest seed left, so I think that kind of is telling as well.
Mhm. You've been liking the Anthony Edwards legend killer run that he's back on again after last year where he eliminated Nikola Jokic, Kevin Durant, Devin Booker, and then this year he eliminates LeBron, Luca, Curry,
Yep.
Jimmy Butler, Draymond Green. Legend killer, but can he get it done? Can he get to that finals appearance?
Yeah,
Is OKC gonna stop him? He's in a tough
it's
spot.
tough.
OKC is such a great team. They deserve all their praise. And I mean, we got to talk about their leader, Shea, MVP. What were your thoughts on the Shea MVP?
Oof. See, I've always kind of been a Jokic backer for the season. I think Jokic deserved it, to be honest. But I won't say that Shea had a non-MVP season. I think he had a great season. And I think any other year recently, I would say he probably deserved it. But I think Jokic had a brilliant season. I think he should have won it. But
Yeah,
no disrespect to Shea. I think he's brilliant. And I think he's also disrespected by like the free throw merchant whole thing with that. I don't think he is a free throw merchant, to be honest. Some people might disagree, but
I mean, free throw merchants. There's so many people in the game of basketball that have been free throw merchants that don't get that label. Shea is at the peak of his prime right now. He wins an MVP off of a Jokic had an amazing year, putting up Wilt Chamberlain numbers, first center to ever average a triple double. So, all praise to Nikola Jokic, 100%. But Shea gets that MVP, and everybody just wants to clown on him because he shoots a lot of free throws. What are some other people that
yeah.
shot a lot of free throws? Kobe Bryant, somebody that a lot of people look up to. Jalen Brunson in the Eastern Conference shoots
Yep.
so many free throws, and his fouls, in my opinion, are worse than the Shea fouls because he's just like there's
No,
literally
you see that one where he grabbed the person's hand and hit him in the face with his own
he
hand.
grabbed Aaron Nesmith's arm and hit himself in the face with Aaron
Yep.
Nesmith's arm. Like Shea
Yeah.
is just smart with how to control his body and draw those fouls. James Harden is another guy. He won an MVP off of shooting free throws a whole year.
Hmm.
But he didn't get those free throw calls in the playoffs, and the Rockets never were able to get past the Warriors. Shea,
Hmm.
on the other hand, got past the other MVP. It's not like Jokic was really outperforming him. I think they were both on the same level that
I
series.
think they're even, yeah.
So I've always been Team Shea MVP this year, but like you, saying Shea deserves his flowers. I think Nikola Jokic also deserves his flowers. Amazing year.
Hmm.
I just think OKC fifth best record of all time in the NBA, fifth most wins, and they were so dominant. And Shea was their leader. Didn't play in 24th quarters and still put up 32, 6, and 5. Like, I just think at that point, the Nuggets were a little shaky throughout the year, even showed it in the playoffs. I just still think, for me, Shea was my MVP. I was talking to somebody about maybe a co MVP. Doesn't really happen much, but if there was a year to be a co MVP, this was probably the year because both guys were just so good. But
100% agree, yeah.
yeah, and I mean, so talked about the Eastern and Western Conference, talked about Shea. What are your finals predictions? Because will have you back on after the offseason's done, so the finals will already be over. What is your finals predictions as of right now?
Yeah, so I got the Thunder. I got the Thunder winning it. I think they're going to be able to close the Minnesota series up faster than I think the Pacers will, which I think will give them a little boost. And I just think the Thunder are too overpowering of a team for a team like the Knicks or the Pacers. I think Thunder outmatch the Pacers, and I think the Knicks would be a tougher competition for them. But with the Knicks having to come back from 2-0, I think it would be too much for them.
Mhm. How many games? So you got Pacers versus Thunder in the finals. How many games
Yep.
do you think that goes?
I think it goes 5 or 6. I think I'm gonna go 6 just to be safe, but
Hmm.
I really could see it with 5. I just think the Thunder are too good this year, to be
Yeah,
honest. And
I
I
think.
just think it's their year to win. I think last year they were disappointed, playing more with a chip on their shoulder. I think they get it done.
Yeah, and I mean, they have this window of time where they're in the perfect position to kind of create a dynasty in the age of parity. This is the first time we've seen in a long time 7 different champions in so many.
Yeah,
And there's not with the new CBA rule, you can't really create a dynasty like that. I mean, Boston was almost there, but they have to shake some things up this offseason. And the Thunder being such a young team, there's a chance that they could create a little dynasty before that CBA kind of ruins it. Do you think the Thunder could create a dynasty out of this?
for sure. I think they can. I think they have like the perfect kind of combination of people. Shea, obviously MVP. I'm a big fan of Chet. I think Jalen Williams is a perfect like kind of like a Scottie Pippen to
Michael Jordan.
Michael Jordan shy kind of thing.
Mhm.
So there's that, and then I think their locker room is in a perfect position too. The other Jalen Williams, he's
Yeah, I
a
mean,
he's one that you kind of need on that team just for like to keep things kind of on the mellower side, I guess.
yeah, I
I don't know,
mean,
he's a good locker room guy,
yeah, the
and
Thunder just they got a great culture there. OKC has
yep,
had a great culture since they've moved to OKC. That's why they moved there in the first place. Um, but I mean, yeah, you got so many guys off the bench that are always just ready to play. Doris Burke said it best. Nikola Topic was a lottery pick. He's not even dressed for games against this Minnesota Timberwolves in this series. That's a
yeah.
lottery pick. They have another lottery pick coming this year, and they were almost this close to having a top 8 pick if the Sixers didn't move into the top 6. They were so
Hmm.
close to having a top 8 pick, and I mean, maybe they got a Kaman Maluwak. Then
From
they can move
Duke,
on from
yeah.
they can move on from Hartenstein and extend the dynasty. But they're so good at drafting players. Sam Presti is amazing executive. That's why he won Executive of the Year.
Hmm.
I mean, yeah, I think this is going to be the first dynasty we see in a while. The Warriors dynasty was amazing. All a lot of drafted guys from them, other than Durant. And
Yep.
at this point, I mean, Shea was drafted by the Hornets, traded to the Clippers, but then they moved on from Paul George and got him. And then they drafted
Yeah.
J-Dub, drafted Chet, draft Cason Wallace, draft Lou Dort. All those guys are a lot of homegrown talent there. So it's going to be fun to watch this Thunder team being super young, 2 straight first seeds being the youngest teams in NBA history. So, yeah, this dynasty, this could be a scary team for the next 4 or 5 years before the CBA really ruins it.
Yeah. And even being a Spurs fan, and the Thunder kind of being kind of a proximity rival, they're still like just a fun team to watch. And honestly, I don't really get how you can hate on a team like the Thunder. Um, Caruso also being there, I think is a name that a lot of fans like, and just what he did with the Jokic there in the last round was impressive. I was like, wow, like this dude's actually like a real what a player.
Yeah, I mean, game 7, that Caruso versus Jokic matchup was just shows why they traded a guy that was another lottery pick in Josh Giddey to get Alex
Hmm.
Caruso, who was towards the tail end of his prime-ish of his career. And
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, they just make amazing moves throughout. And I mean, this year they didn't make any moves during the season, which this is a perfect segue into the Spurs season. Brought up the Spurs, kind of we saw that game where the Spurs and the Thunder got chippy after the De'Aaron Fox trade. I know you remember that, where I think it
Hmm.
was it Champagny and
Champagne, yep.
Kenrich Williams going at it, two guys that mean they're not big names, but kind of created a little rivalry there. What was
They were
your
swinging.
to the Spurs season? Now, I mean, you guys finished what, 13th in the Western Conference.
Yep.
Victor Wembanyama went down later in the season with blood clots in his shoulder. You made the De'Aaron Fox move halfway through the year, and Pop officially has retired. Mitch Johnson is your new head coach. What has been your reaction to the Spurs up until this day?
Yeah, so for sure it's been an eventful last 12 months. I think obviously a little disappointed when you look at where we finished, 13th, but the stuff that happened along the way I think is positive. We weren't expecting Castle to be an rookie of the year at all. I don't think many people expected that. Um, so it was really great to see him turn into a player he already is now, I think. And he's super young. He was one of the younger players in the draft. He's got a lot of stuff to even improve on in itself. Yeah, Wembanyama obviously going down is a little disappointing, a little scary as well,
Hmm.
because you hope that's not something that continues, with people mention like the Chris Bosh issue with the blood clots, so you hope it doesn't turn into something like that. De'Aaron Fox, obviously, that was a huge addition, I think. We needed a big superstar, veteran kind of player because our team's so young. We needed a guy like that to kind of like put in some points and kind of take off the burden Wembanyama has on the offensive side. And, obviously he was kind of dealing with that injury for a while. So when Wembanyama was out for the season, it made sense to do that surgery. Um, because honestly, I don't think we were gonna contend for anything in the playoffs, so it was all right. Um, I think Chris Paul was an underrated acquisition. I think he actually was instrumental to Stephon Castle's development, and he's a guy that I hope we can sign for another year because he's a perfect like mentor piece, and yeah, I think he's a perfect fit for the Spurs.
Yeah, I mean, as a Sacramento fan, obviously you took my boy, my favorite player in the league, you took the Aaron from us. And obviously, again, as a Kings fan, I know the injury Fox has been dealing with. He's been dealing with that pinky finger injury for so long. That was prior to the Golden State series. He was dealing with that during our Beam Team year where we were the 2 seed for a while. He's been dealing with that injury for probably about 2, 3 years at this point. So amazing to get him just some extra rest and kind of just like a hard reset for the Spurs after the
Hmm.
trade deadline. It's kind of like Castle just got flow, continued to play throughout the year, and but Fox and Wemby, your two stars, just got an extended rest. And hopefully, like you said, the Wemby injury is just kind of like a one-off kind of it's it's just something blood clots are something that's scary for NBA players like because like you said with Chris Bosh he was
Yeah,
showing no signs of slowing down anytime soon but then got forced into that early retirement due to blood clots. Damian
yeah,
Lillard was dealing with blood clots and then we saw he tore his Achilles in the playoffs which partially could have
that
been due,
sucks.
due to that but I think you said it best. It was a disappointing year from a record wise.
Yeah,
Also disappointing that you don't get to see a Wemby Defensive Player of the Year, but
yeah,
a sign of hope from that doesn't
for sure.
extend Wemby's contract as of this point. If he won Defense Player of the Year when he's up for that extension, it just gets even higher and even higher and even higher. So maybe that's kind of a blessing in disguise for you guys, but I think it was low key an underrated year for the Spurs. You didn't really give up that much to get the Aaron Fox, in my opinion.
Yep.
Gave up some Spurs guys like Trey Jones and Zach Collins, who probably were fan favorites of the Spurs. You gave up
Yeah,
a
I was a Trey Jones fan myself, so
yeah,
it kind of sucked seeing him go, but I
yeah,
don't know if he was going to be the right guy for a championship team, so
yeah, long
not
term
the worst.
championship team. And you only give up three first round picks, and one's going to turn into a second round pick. So
Yep.
you only gave up really two second round picks for a guy who's basically in his prime. So,
Yeah.
and probably a perfect pairing with Wemby because the speed that De'Aaron Fox plays with is going to just match what the Spurs kind of want. And I'm excited to see Mitch moving forward
Yeah.
as the head coach officially now of the San Antonio Spurs. Obviously, we were talking a little bit before that it was kind of a strange thing when they didn't even try to go out and get Mike Malone or Taylor Jenkins,
Hmm.
which for me, I think is partially due to those guys have already kind of created a career outside of the Spurs and outside of the Pop coaching tree. Whereas Mitch can kind of come in and create his own legacy under the Spurs and under Pop's coaching tree, but now with the Spurs, which I like from for his standpoint. Also, don't like it from his standpoint because he has to live up to that Pop legacy, kind of being the guy that fills in for Pop and then takes over after Pop leaves is going to be some big shoes to fill.
Shoes to fill. Yep.
But how do you feel about Mitch Johnson now moving forward as the head coach of the San Antonio Spurs?
Yeah, I mean, like you said, he's from the system. He's been under Pop for I think almost a decade.
Mm,
So that's something I really like. Um, yeah, people said the Moses or Coach Malone kind of uh, as a candidate, but honestly, like you said, I feel like I want someone from like the Pop tree, and he understands the system well, and he was the coach for this year, like for the majority of the year. And you could say that like maybe there were some questionable decisions he made, but he hasn't had a full off season with the team, so you got to keep that in mind. And also, actually saw an interesting thing. I don't know if you saw it about him and DeJounte Murray, like back in when DeJounte Murray was in like high school or something like that. He was like he was like in jail. He like bailed him out and
mm.
kind of like set him on the right path and kind of got him to the NBA. So I think that's kind of telling of a kind of player's coach he is, and I hope he can kind of bring something like that to the NBA and kind of develop some players and hopefully make San Antonio what it was back in like 2000s with Tim Duncan and all that. So,
Yeah, I think Mitch did a pretty decent job with the core that he was with, kind of being thrown into the fire because Pop went down and it was kind of just like a question mark for a while what he was going to be. Like if Pop was going to come back, then it got ruled that Pop wasn't coming back for the rest of the year.
right. Yep.
Kind of like up in the air. Is Pop going to retire? Is he going to come back for another year? I think Mitch did a really good job with what he has, what he was able to do. I mean, obviously, being an interim head coach, you're not going to go out there and be like setting all these sets and having all this stuff because you don't know if next week you might not even be the head coach anymore. Pop might be
Right.
back.
Exactly.
You're just sitting back on the bench. But I think the players played for Mitch Johnson really well this year. Wemby, I think he's a super coachable guy. And a guy like Mitch Johnson, I didn't even know that about DeJounte Murray. I knew about his when he was in high school, the troubles he went through and
Hmm.
stuff that he dealt with, but I didn't know that Mitch Johnson was the one that bailed him out of jail. So that just shows the character of Mitch Johnson and who
Right.
he's got his players back. Even DeJounte Murray wasn't even on his team at that point, but he had his back,
Um,
put his own hard-earned money. into bailing him out of jail. So that shows who Mitch Johnson is as a character, as a coach. I think Wemby will fit right in. Mitch Johnson's kind of a younger coach too at this point, so you kind of build him
Right.
around with a younger core. And obviously, something else that might have went under the radar, but you have a player's coach already in Chris Paul. He definitely
Yeah.
helped Mitch Johnson throughout this year with some of the on-court stuff, being able to tell people where to go at this set and probably helped Mitch Johnson come up with some sets at that point. So I think again, we'll move into the offseason in a couple minutes, but Chris Paul is going to be a huge person to try to bring back because I think he brought a lot of character development, brought a lot of veteran mentality, and just kind of molded some of the younger guys into being more professional as a Chris Paul you would expect to do. And now, I mean, the Spurs coming up, they're sitting with the second and the 14th overall pick. What was your reaction to the Spurs jumping up to the top four pick, getting the second pick? And also, what was your reaction to the Dallas Mavericks winning the lottery?
Yeah. So leading up to the draft lottery, I was kind of just saying as a joke that we might get the number one pick and get Cooper Flag. And then when the draft lottery actually happened, we were in the top four. I'm like, this might actually happen. And obviously we didn't get it. We got second, which I was super surprised by itself. A lot of people said around, I think it was like a 60 or 70% chance we would get like eight or nine. So
Mhm. Yeah.
obviously a bit of luck there. Um, I think it puts us in a really good spot. And we got a lot of leverage now if we want to go over a trade. People have been linking us with a lot of top names to make a trade for us. So a second overall pick is huge leverage for landing a trade like that. Dallas Mavericks, the number one pick. It's a little rigged. There's just something fishy going on there. Um, obviously I hate it as a Spurs fan. Probably our biggest rivals recently. So yeah, I hate it as a Spurs fan for them to get number one. How about you?
Yeah, I mean, when the top four, obviously, I came into the draft lottery. Kings fan, we had we're sitting at the 13th pick in or we're sitting at 13th in odds to jump up, and our pick goes to Atlanta if it's outside the top 12. So I'm hoping, I'm just praying, sitting there, 0.8% chance. I'm like, come on, please, please jump up to that top four because that's the only spots we could go. So we could get something. The Hawks are getting our 13th overall pick from Kevin Herter, who's not even on our team anymore, who had one good year for us, then had two straight bad years, and then we traded him.
Mhm.
And obviously, we stayed at the 13th pick. Hawks got our pick.
Yeah.
Then at that point, I was about to turn off the draft lottery. But then I was like, you know what? I'll just watch it. It doesn't take that long. Basketball's right out
Yeah.
for it. So same channel. Might as well just keep it on. Then I
Right.
saw top four, Charlotte Hornets, Philadelphia 76ers, San Antonio Spurs, and Dallas Mavericks. And I'm sitting there and I'm like, man, if Erik wins the draft lottery, we're all in trouble for a long time. If San Antonio gets Cooper Flag and you got back-to-back Rookie of the Years and Victor Wembanyama and Stephon Castle, and then probably
Back
three
to back to
straight
back.
with Cooper Flag, and you got De'Aaron Fox on your team already. I'm like,
It's game
but
over.
but also I wanted the Spurs to win it. I didn't want to see Philly get him because
Hmm.
we'd have to listen to Owen, and that would suck. But
Yeah.
Philly fans are annoying. They don't shut up about the Joel Embiid MVP, even though he doesn't deserve it.
Yep.
And they just make everybody hate their players, no matter
Yeah.
what
So
it is, to be
I
honest.
was on, yeah, I was on the same boat with you. I really did not want 76ers to win. I don't know. Mavericks, I think, didn't deserve it. Um, so yeah, I was really hoping those two wouldn't get it. And when I saw the Hornets at 4, I'm like, oh man. I kind of wanted the Hornets to win it just
Hmm.
because I feel like it'd be a cool combination with LaMelo and Flag. I think that would have been kind of fun. But
Yeah, and
yeah.
then I was also sitting there. I'm like, yeah, the Hornets would be a fun team, but then I'm like, they can't develop their players. Like LaMelo Ball is just out there shooting YMCA shots, shooting like Elijah Flood.
What a
But
name.
I mean, I just at that point I didn't want him to go anywhere but San Antonio. But then I'm like, if he goes to San Antonio, the Western Conference is gonna run through OKC and San Antonio for the next
Mm.
15 years, and it's just gonna be a battle of whoever makes it out of the Western Conference is gonna win the NBA championship at that point. And
What it would be, yeah.
but I wanted San Antonio to win it, and then I saw they got second, and I'm like, dang. Still get Dylan Harper though, if you keep the second overall pick. But also
Hmm.
second overall pick, you're in a position where Dylan Harper is the consensus second overall pick in this draft.
Yeah.
So,
Hmm.
and it's pretty much been like that all year. Cooper Flag is one, Dylan Harper's two, Ace Bailey is three, even though he's probably gonna fall
Fringe.
a bit after
Yeah.
his measurements at the combine after being listed at 6'10", 180 at Rutgers to now 6'7", like 185 at the NBA combine. He
It's
could fall.
interesting for sure.
But he is from Philly though, so that's the only thing that could go their way with Philly being the third overall pick, maybe going after him. But I mean, what you're a Spurs fan, you're with the second overall pick, and you're getting linked to guys like Giannis Antetokounmpo, Lauri
Hmm.
Markkanen, Kevin Durant. What do you want the Spurs to do with the second overall pick?
Excuse me.
God bless.
Um, yeah, so I think the first thing they should do is probably see what I mean, what they are gonna do is see what kind of trades are offered for the second pick. Um, so starting with Giannis, I think that's kind of been the consensus destination for him. They also say Houston, I think.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, we have a lot of assets to get him, and he would be probably take us to on like a next level. In my opinion, though, I'd feel like for me, I wouldn't want him on the team. Not because I don't think he's a great player. He's fantastic. Probably top 3, top 5.
Mhm.
Um, and it came off kind of I feel like it kind of revitalized a little bit. I think he showed improvement from the season before to this year.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
He had an amazing year.
I don't know if he really fits what we have. We kind of need more three-point shooting. He shoots it somewhat, but he's more of like a slasher,
Mhm.
get to the bucket kind of guy. And I just don't know how it would go with like spacing with Wemby. I don't know if it crowds the paint or not.
Mhm.
And obviously we're gonna have to give up a bunch to get him. And I don't know if we're kind of like at a point where we can win a championship like right away as soon as he joins, and also makes our window of a championship team it would probably shrink it to like 2 or 3 years, to
Yeah.
be honest, because we'd probably have to give up a bunch of young pieces. Stephon Castle might be within that package just because it's such a big package needed. So yeah, I wouldn't want Giannis to be honest. Markkanen's another guy that I think he's great for our system. To be honest, I think I would want him over Giannis. Um, but yeah, another thing, like his contract is huge. I think it's like what 40 something million.
He makes a lot.
And so honestly, like, yeah, we could get him and it wouldn't be as much to get him,
Mhm.
but it still closes that window where I feel like I'd rather want like a to be good. like to be like a championship level team in 2 years and be that kind of level for like t the next 10 years
Mhm.
rather than have like a 3 or 4 year window to win a championship now.
Yeah.
That's kind of my thinking. Um, what was the other name you mentioned?
Kevin Durant, I mean, he's
Kevin
definitely going
Durant.
to
I
move
like him.
from
Yeah.
Phoenix because Phoenix needs a hard reset. Just
For
keep
sure.
keep Devin Booker, hard reset. But that's another guy that was getting circulated in the pool of names that San Antonio and Houston could be looking at. I mean, I know you're a big Kevin Durant fan,
Yeah, I
and
am. Yeah.
but he is a little bit older than the other guys that you could be looking at.
Mm,
Marketing contract though, 46.3 million next year, 46.1,
yeah.
49.8, and then $53.5 million in his last year, which would be the 2028-2029 season, which De'Aaron Fox needs an extension next year if you want to keep him. Wemby's going to be up for an extension in, I think, 2 years. So,
Yep.
yeah, the Lauri Markkanen move would be it would be a stranglehold on what you could do. I think he's the cheapest. Kevin Durant might be the cheapest out of the big three names.
Yeah. See, I wonder what they're gonna price Kevin Durant as, just because Phoenix kind of needs to let him go, so they might be a little more willing to negotiate a smaller price for him. I'm not sure. They might not. Might be like a Giannis kind of situation, but there is that possibility. Yeah, Kevin Durant is a guy. He's probably my favorite from the list. Because I am a little biased because I am a Kevin Durant fan, but I think he spaces the floor the best. And he's also a guy that's kind of been linked to San Antonio for a while. I think he's known to be a fan of Pop. I mean, Pop's not here anymore, but he's still part of the team.
Yeah, he's
And
still
I'm sure that Mitch Johnson will kind of be doing kind of the stuff Pop did as far as like how he coaches. But yeah,
I mean, KD went to Texas. I mean, bring him back to Texas. He does only have one more year left on his contract though, and it's 54.7 million next year, which is a
yeah,
huge contract, but also gives you some leverage. He's 35, 36, going to be 37 next year, and he's going to be at the tail end of his career. Maybe you could shorten that contract up a little bit and pay him less money, but I think the I think the Suns, they kind of just need to wash their hands of the Kevin Durant trade. Obviously, they're going to
mm,
want some picks back. The Spurs have picks to give. 14th overall pick could definitely go. They definitely would want the second overall pick. I don't know if San Antonio is willing to give that second overall pick up for a guy that
yeah, I'm not sure.
picks. I think the only guy they're willing to give up that second overall pick for is Giannis or Lauri Markkanen if they're getting that fifth pick in return. And if that is a
Hmm.
trade that you could get, like say you move Harrison Barnes, Keldon Johnson,
Yeah, Keldon for sure.
Jeremy Sohan, the second overall pick and the 14th overall pick for Lauri and the fifth overall pick. I know I put that in the group chat,
Yep.
didn't like it that much. They said it was giving up a lot for Laurie, but also
Hmm.
being a big Trey Johnson fan, fifth overall pick is a spot where you could maybe draft Trey Johnson if he falls into your lap. So, I mean,
Yeah.
that's what I was thinking with that trade when I was using the trade machine. I was thinking Eric's a big Trey Johnson fan. Fifth
Yeah,
overall
I
pick
am.
where he's projected to go right now. It could be I mean, obviously he could go third or fourth, and you're kind of in like a what do we do now at the fifth overall pick? Jazz are also needing of a guy like a Dylan Harper who is super young, who could just be their star. They have a lot of good young pieces. Isaiah Collier had a really great year last year. Keontae George is still really solid. He struggled last year, but they need like a Dylan Harper to come in and just be that guy. But yeah, I mean, KD is probably going to be the least that you'd have to give up to get him, being on that last year of his contract, oldest player that you could trade for. But another guy
Mhm.
that I was thinking about today, I just randomly popped into my mind that Chris Middleton, older guy, another last year of his contract deal. You need 3-point shooting. Chris Middleton
Yep.
last year wasn't amazing, but pretty solid. And they have another contract on the Wizards, another great shooter, Corey Kispert, that I saw. And I put a trade, 14th overall pick goes to Washington, and Keldon Johnson, Harrison Barnes, and Malachi Branham for Corey Kispert and Chris Middleton. What do you think about that trade, Erik?
I like it. Uh, I'm a big fan of Chris Middleton from, watching him at Milwaukee. He kind of made a name for him with 3-point shooting. And I think he's a good guy to kind of, I would say, like, support. So I feel like he'd be a perfect
Supporting
piece.
cast for a
Yeah,
star.
as like a supporting cast player to a Wembanyama Fox kind of thing. So I like that. Corey Kispert is another like 3-point player that we would need. And I feel like we're not giving up a crazy amount. Keldon Johnson, he's young, he's 25, but honestly, I wasn't really impressed with him. I think, this past season he was on the bench a lot actually. And I think maybe it's time to move on from a guy like Keldon Johnson. I still think he's a decent player.
Mm,
Um, but to me, he'd be one of the first names on a trade for a better player. I think also giving up the 14 is not too bad. We can do stuff with the 14, but I don't think we're going to be able to land I feel like it's more of an asset than it could be for a player. Um, you did mention that player before, Fleming from
Rasheed
St.
Wallace
Joseph's.
from St. Joseph's.
He's a player that I think might be able to fall to 14, and I would like to see San Antonio get. He's got a lot of like raw talent, and his build is like crazy
Mm,
for potential. I think he could be like, with the right scenario, he could turn into like a superstar, honestly.
mm.
He has like the right build and everything. So I think if we were going to go 14, we could go a guy like him, like a project, or we could go like a win now kind of guy. The Clifford from Colorado State, I think, is a name that has been kind of going around that late lottery kind of section, maybe even late first round. But that's another guy I would think would be interesting.
Yeah, I think
Um,
another guy, Carter Bryant out of Arizona, he showed a lot of promise during the March Madness
mhm.
that they went on. And
Yeah, I saw a lot of mocks having him going to San Antonio actually. So
yeah,
that's
in
another
my
guy
mock draft that I did, I had him going 14th to Utah. I had them doing the Laurie Markkinen trade
for
to
him.
San
Yeah,
Antonio. And I had San Antonio getting Trey Johnson as the fifth pick. But also with that Chris Middleton pick or that Chris Middleton trade, another thing, you didn't give up the second overall pick. You
yeah,
still have that chance to draft Dylan Harper, and you draft Dylan Harper, you make that trade, get Chris Middleton, Corey Kispert, then you move into next year. You have De'Aaron Fox, Stephon Castle, Chris Middleton, Devin Vassell, Victor Wembanyama, and then off the bench you got guys like Chris Paul if you can bring him back, Corey Kispert, Dylan Harper, and then whatever else you decide to move on. I mean, that's a really solid trade, I think, if you're kind of in a position,
hmm,
maybe not to win a championship right away, but to be a playoff team,
competitive.
super competitive team, maybe
Hmm.
make that run to a conference finals or even a finals appearance behind Victor Wembanyama jumping up and being one of the best players in the league. But
Yeah,
yeah, I mean, it gives you a lot of wiggle room. Then if you don't like what you see from Chris Middleton from this next season, you could just move on from him, open up some cap space to then have for De'Aaron Fox extension, then a Wemby extension the next year. Um, and you don't really give up anything. I mean, Keldon Johnson, what did the longest tenure players on the Spurs, I'm pretty sure, because
Yeah, which is crazy, honestly, because
being
he's still
super young
25.
and I still can't get over Keldon Johnson coming off the bench this year looking like Russell Westbrook. Wearing number 0 with the double arm sleeves. I looked at him and I'm like, bro, when did Russell Westbrook get on the Spurs? I'm like, I thought this dude was on the Nuggets. And then I'm like, oh, that's Keldon Johnson. I was like, oh, yeah. But and you give up the 14th pick, could turn into Carter Bryant, Rasheer Fleming, any of those guys in that. But I mean, I think both teams kind of win from that trade. Wizards,
Yeah.
you're not in a win now move. You'd rather just open up space for young guys to play. You don't really want to pay Chris Middleton all that money. You can move on from Marcus Smart, Malcolm Brogdon, Jordan Poole, maybe. And I think that's a smart trade, a safe trade for the Spurs to make. But it's, do the Spurs want to be safe, be consistent, or do they want to make that jump to be
Hmm.
finals, conference finals, championship aspirations, which is a big conversation that they got to have. Can Mitch Johnson lead a team like that? But yeah, I mean, also for the Spurs, now we're just into off-season talk, off-season guide. This year, you got Chris Paul is going to be a free agent.
Hmm.
Mamu Kelishvili, who I know Erik is a big fan of Mamu. That's a role player that everybody loves if he's on your team. Bismack
Yep.
Biyombo is a you signed him late in the year to do the Victor Wembanyama minutes. Charles Bassey, who's kind of just been on the team for a couple years,
Yep.
and then Jordan McLaughlin, who was part of the De'Aaron Fox trade.
Yep.
Out of those guys, obviously Chris Paul is the biggest guy you want to bring back this coming season.
Yeah, for sure.
And I mean, if you're the Spurs, do you if you do get that second overall pick, you keep the second overall pick, you draft Dylan Harper, would you want to bring back Chris Paul and be a mentor for Dylan Harper? Or would you rather just like let Dylan Harper rock out on the bench and be just like a sixth man of the year kind of guy?
It's a good question. Um, I think we definitely want to go Dylan Harper, number two, and I would still want to keep Chris Paul. I think Chris Paul does so much that kind of goes under the radar. You
Hmm.
don't see it on the stat sheet, but I feel like you definitely saw the Chris Paul impact on Stephon Castle's game this season. I think if you've watched Spurs games, you kind of and watch Stephon Castle play, he's just under so much control. Like his body control is very good, and I feel like he's got a really good feel for like the game. I think his timing and like his pace, like perfect, like really good for a rookie. It's
Hmm.
actually like it impressed me so much. And drafting him, we wouldn't really think he was gonna be like a big offensive guy right out of the gate. Like we didn't draft him for his offensive abilities, he's more defensive. And I feel like he kind of saw the Chris Paul mentor come out in his game there. So Chris Paul is definitely a guy I want to keep, even with Dylan Harper there. I think we can see Dylan Harper just get to a exponential level. Like I think he's already like so good, and if you have a guy like Chris Paul mentoring him, he could turn into a superstar maybe within a year. Honestly, which
Yeah,
is
I mean,
crazy to think
definitely has
about.
that potential, and he gets to learn under a guy that is a Hall of Famer. Chris Paul, obviously one of the best point guards we've ever seen in the NBA, even from an undersized position. I mean, Chris Paul's 6 foot, 6'1", super small
Yeah.
guy. But even if you bring Chris Paul back next year, say De'Aaron Fox goes down for a little bit, or you're in the playoffs with a young team, you
That
have
too, yeah.
you have that veteran leadership that he could be like we saw with Dennis Schroeder for the Pistons this postseason run. I mean, a lot of those guys never been in the postseason before. Kate Cunningham, Jalen Duren, Isaiah Stewart, all those guys, super young. And Dennis Schroeder came in and just made an instant impact whenever he was on the court, slowed the game down for him.
Hmm.
Paul could do that if you're in a playoff situation. So I think Chris Paul is a huge part that you got to try to really bring back on a team friendly contract
Hmm.
a year or two because Chris Paul, he doesn't have many years left. We already know that. And but just having him being able to coach even a guy like De'Aaron Fox, who is a veteran for the Spurs. He's not like a crazy 10-year veteran in the league, but 6 or 7 years in the league compared to Chris Paul's 17, 18. Chris Paul can
Yeah.
coach him, help Mitch Johnson out, slow him down, help with rotations and stuff. Chris Paul is probably the biggest target this offseason for the Spurs, no matter what,
For sure.
I think.
I don't know if it would be that difficult to keep him either because I think he likes what we have going on in San Antonio, and I'm sure he likes the role he's in right now as kind of a mentor guy, but he still gets decent minutes and he starts. So I think it won't be too difficult to get him back. I just hope it won't be like anything crazy for a contract.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And then in the 2026 offseason, so next year, you're going to have Harrison Barnes is going to be a free agent. Aaron
Yep.
Fox is also going to be a free agent. Then Jeremy Sohan, Malachi Branham, Blake Wesley are all restricted free agents. And then is it Justin or Julian Champagny?
Julian.
Julian
Yeah, Julian.
Champagny always
Dude,
gets,
they look exactly the same. It's crazy.
I think they're twins actually,
Are
but
they really?
yeah, I'm pretty sure they're twins. And I always get them mixed up. Same thing. When Jalen McDaniels, not Jaden, the Timberwolves star, but when Jalen McDaniels was a starter for a couple teams,
Hmm.
yeah, those two mixed up because their names are so similar. But yeah, Julian Champagny is going to have a team option in the 2026 offseason. Had a really good, solid year this past season with the Spurs. Out of those
Hmm.
guys, obviously Jeremy Sohan and De'Aaron Fox are at the top of the list of signings you need to make. De'Aaron
Yeah.
Fox, you're gonna want to shore him up either this offseason or halfway through the season next year. But Harrison Barnes, he's a tradable contract. What do you want to see them do with Harrison Barnes? He had an amazing year. He shot 43% this past season on the Spurs from the 3-point line. Do you want to see him be a trade ship, like a trade chip with a Keldon Johnson, or would you want to keep Harrison Barnes for another year and then test his waters next year, bringing him back?
Yeah. So I think I'll say 2026, Harrison Barnes might not even be on the team anymore, to be honest. I think by that time we'll have kind of already replacement for him. I think would be more of like a temporary guy. Kind of we brought him in for that. And yeah, I think he's more of a trade chip.
Chip.
I don't see him on the team past 2026.
All right. So you want Harrison Barnes traded in this offseason. Keldon Johnson,
Yeah.
another another tradable contract. And you might not want to see him go, but he does have a tradable contract.
Mm.
So the Spurs, you want them to make a move. We've already talked about a couple. What is the at the top of the list that you want to see the Spurs make?
Yeah, so obviously just coming back from De'Aaron Fox trade, I don't want it to like make another splash. So I would stay away from like a big name or like a bigger name, I guess, like the Giannis or something like that. So I did write some names down. I said Nas Reed would be a good player for us. I think it might be tough to get him just because fan favorite for the Timberwolves and just off a six man of the year 2 years ago, so it'd
Nasrid
be
is also a free agent, so it'd have to be a sign and trade for the Spurs, which I don't think, just being 100% honest, I don't think the Timberwolves would want a Harrison Barnes, Keldon Johnson deal. I think they just want to try to go in there and
yeah.
get Nas Reed back. and Naz Reid wants to get paid. I mean, he wants to be paid starter money because, like we know, Naz Reid is the best center they have on that team, other than Rudy Gobert. He's he's been making me very angry these past couple games, and I'd rather just see Naz Reid in the starting lineup for the Timberwolves for the next 4 or 5 years. But that would be a
Yeah,
tough move to make because
tough move. I think Naz Reid I really like. And I think it would be the perfect player. I just think it would be hard to do.
Mhm.
Almost pretty impossible, almost. Um, Other than that though, I think you with your trade with the Chris Middleton, I think it would be a good one to do. I like a guy like Mo Wagner, but like I said, it's gonna be tough to get him out of it's gonna be tough to get him out of Orlando because
Mhm.
they got that brotherly connection there in Orlando. So to be honest, I don't really know if we really make a trade, big trade, to be honest. If we do, I hope it's nothing crazy. Um, yeah, Keldon Johnson and Harrison Barnes would be the two guys that I think would be first on the block. But yeah, I don't know. Do you have any ideas?
Yeah, I mean,
Like, I
obviously,
feel like power forward, shooting power forwards,
yeah,
kind of what we would want,
power forward is
like a
a
backup
position
center.
that the Spurs need to figure out what they're going to move with.
Mm.
Because if you run a De'Aaron Fox, Stephon Castle, Devin Vassell starting lineup with Victor Wembanyama in the paint, you're gonna be running three guys that are 6'6" or shorter, and then Victor Wembanyama, who's obviously 7'3". He's definitely taller than that. Let's be 100% honest. I
Yeah,
all saw that picture of him standing next to David Robinson at the Pop press conference.
made them look like guards.
Yeah, he made even Stephon Castle looked huge. So either those guys,
Stephon Castle's like, I
either
don't
those
know.
guys
He
shrunk,
reminds me of like LeBron almost, like with.
yeah, either those guys shrunk or Stephon Castle is definitely taller than 6'6". Like Tim Duncan and Stephon Castle looked like they were the exact same height, which is crazy to think about.
Wait, I
And
got a question for you.
hmm,
Do you think Stephon Castle could make a switch like in position wise, like from a point guard to like a shooting guard or small forward even?
yeah, I think Stephon Castle, this is a really good question. Obviously he's been a guard, combo guard kind of thing, even at his days in UConn.
UConn.
He was the starting point guard. But he has that positional size at 6'6" that I think he could transition to a more small forward-ish position. But also position wise, there's a lot of guys that don't really have a labeled position because they kind of just fly around the court. And like a guy like Alex Caruso, who's 6'5", but he's positioned as a point guard, he can guard Nikola Jokic, who's a five.
Hmm.
So I don't think position wise, he's ever gonna really be not labeled a shooting guard, point guard, but he's
Right.
the guy that you could see playing a small forward like a Lou Dort, or I think
Yeah.
he's kind of a guy that could guard 1 through 4 at this point, and maybe in a couple of years he'll be able to guard 1 through 5, depending on the center. But yeah, I think
Hmm.
Stephon Castle is definitely a guy that you could throw in any position right now, and he'd be able to continue being what he is.
Gotcha.
Now, I mean, for me, going back to you asking about what trade the Spurs should make, I think obviously the Chris Middleton trade is probably the safest trade. You only get rid of
Hmm.
the 14th pick.
Yep.
But I mean, Kevin Durant being on the market, only having 1 year left, I think it's tough because his value right now is probably at the lowest it will be because being on the last year of his contract, being 36, but he's still Kevin Durant. Like he's still a feared player. He's a shot maker. There's never going to be a point where De'Aaron Fox, Kevin Durant, and Victor Wembanyama aren't making shots. KD is such a fluid scorer, the most pure scorer that we've probably ever seen in NBA history. I think Spurs could go after that, but I don't know if giving up the second overall pick is worth getting Kevin Durant. That's the biggest thing.
Mhm.
I think
Yeah.
only one person on the market right now that is worth giving up that second overall pick, and it's Giannis or Lauri Markkanen, and you get the fifth pick back. But yeah, Kevin Durant, if you can just give up 14th overall pick and guys like Keldon Johnson, Harrison Barnes, his contract is a little bit bigger, so you would also have to move on from a guy like Jeremy Sohan, probably, which I know you're a big Sohan fan. It would
Yep.
see him go. But I mean, if you can get Kevin Durant, I mean, you'd have to
Yeah,
move
I'm also a big Kevin Durant fan, so
you'd have to move on from Kevin Durant or Harrison Barnes, Keldon Johnson, Jeremy Sohan, and Blake Wesley as
hmm
players you'd have to move on from. And at that point, if you could just give up the 14th pick as well, then I think that is 100% the move you make because you get Kevin Durant. You can get
Yeah.
a Kevin Durant Spurs jersey, which I know
Oof.
you would probably love to get.
Been waiting for it, man. Been
And
waiting for it. Because he's been linked for us for like a long time.
yeah, and I mean, like the Corey Kispert, Chris Middleton trade obviously probably makes the most sense for long term and getting
hmm
in a position to compete right now, but just getting the name of Kevin Durant and getting him to coach and train a Victor Wembanyama on shot creation.
Oof.
If Vic could ever get some fluid movement like Kevin Durant, he'd be the most unguardable player in the league. And I
And I
think,
think Kevin Durant wants to go to San Antonio too. I think like you mentioned, he's from played at Texas and I feel like would he be a guy that would take a pay cut or something like that to join a team like San Antonio?
yeah, I think obviously after his contract is done next year, that would be the biggest thing. You make that trade for Kevin Durant, you're gonna want to bring him back for not just 1 year.
hmm
This Middleton trade, you could wash your hands if it doesn't work,
Right,
but with KD, you're probably gonna want to bring him back no matter what. And I think
right.
KD in a position where Pop is still in the office, you're gonna be able to interact with Pop. You're from Tech, like you went to Texas and
hmm
kind of in a position where you could win a championship with this team and go out. You go out being known as a guy that helped Victor Wembanyama, De'Aaron Fox get their first ring, and you don't go out as that guy that jumped ship and went to the Warriors. Because
Yeah.
last year we saw he was one of the names that the Warriors were talking about maybe going after before they got Jimmy Butler. And he said he didn't want to get traded to the Warriors because he didn't want his name to always be linked with the Warriors. So I think
Mm.
the Spurs would be a position where you kind of change your name a little bit. You jump to a team that finished 13th at the tail end of your career and you just want to help them win. So I think
hmm
80 is a smart move. I think he would make a pay cut, take a smaller contract. You'd still have to pay him, obviously, but yeah, I think KD would be a guy that you could look at maybe making a pay cut.
All
And
right.
like the Spurs they need 3-point shooting. KD, now he's not a super volume 3-point shooter, but when he needs to knock it down, he's gonna knock it down.
For sure.
Now, obviously, Chris Middleton and Corey Kispert would probably give you a little bit more 3-point shooting than KD would, but you also got a guy that's basically unguardable if he continues to play like he's been playing. So, yeah, I think KD
hmm
is the best name, but maybe not the best trade.
I agree. 100%.
Now, I mean, say they don't make any of these moves. All you have to do, unless you move on from Harrison Barnes and Keldon Johnson on just little deals to just free up some cap space, right now, all you can offer is your mid-level exception, which is kind of a hard thing to grasp. So this is guys like Mo Wagner would be on a mid-level exception contract that you could offer him. So guys,
Hmm.
Thomas Bryant, guys like that. So if they do decide to not go after guys like Kevin Durant, Chris Middleton, I think you definitely need to move on from Harrison Barnes and Keldon Johnson to free up some cap space to bring in some more guys. And I think biggest things that the Spurs need, backup big man is a position that you definitely need to fill because Bismack Biyombo was not great last year in the minutes he started, and I don't want to see him back as the backup to Victor Wembanyama. I don't want to see Victor Wembanyama be one of those guys like Nikola Jokic, who we talk about for 7, 8 years, that he needs a backup. So when he goes out of the game doesn't just completely collapse on the Spurs.
Hmm.
It's in the Jokic case. So getting a big man backup is something that I think the Spurs definitely need to get. And then 3-point shooting. They ranked 19th in 3-point percentage while being seventh in attempts, and they also gave up the fourth most threes. Now, partially with the 3-point shooting is comes development with Castle and Vassell and Sohan. And some of these guys like Malachi Branham could be a sharpshooter off the bench if you decided.
Yeah.
So development comes with that. I think 3-point shooting will obviously be better next year just due to development. But if you could bring in some sharpshooters, guys maybe like Seth Curry, who didn't really get a lot of minutes with the Hornets, but you could get him on a vet minimum, be somebody that maybe gives you something. But yeah, these are some things that you need to look at. And what do you think the biggest need is? Do you think it's the backup big man? Do you think it's the 3-point shooting, or do you think it's something else entirely, being a Spurs fan?
Yeah, I'd say backup big man is definitely, I think that's for sure the number one um need, I think. And I think we should do it through the draft, honestly. Uh, I mean, 14 is still a lottery pick. There's still, I think it's a pretty deep draft this year, to be honest. And I think there's a chance we can get a solid big man right there from the draft. As far as 3-point shooting, yeah, I think it didn't help that Wembanyama was out because he is a pretty good 3-point shooter. De'Aaron Fox, I mean, he shoots some, but he's more of a
A
get to the
mid-range guy,
rack kind of,
basket.
yeah. So I think it would be a good thing to get, and I don't think it would be that difficult to, is get like a sharpshooter, kind of like corner specialist player. I think that is definitely something we do need. I just don't think it's going to be that difficult to find.
Mhm.
Um, so yeah, we gotta, I feel like through the draft is where we're going to get our backup big man.
All right, yeah, so you're in that position where they don't trade away either the second or the 14th pick, and you bring in a guy like Dylan Harper, who will give you some 3-point shooting while also getting some guys open off the bench. And then
Mhm.
14th pick, there's a couple big men in this draft that are labeled around that pick. You got Derek Queen out of Maryland, who
Yeah.
he has some like hustle and kind of gives up some plays, which could be something that would be changed with the Spurs organization. If you go to the Spurs, you learn hustle, you learn everything that comes with being in the Spurs jersey. But and then there's guys like Thomas Sorber out of Georgetown, who is kind of a more classic big man, a lot of back to the basket type play. Dealt with some injuries his first year of college. Didn't play against DePaul at all last year, but we swept Georgetown. Just gotta remind that. Just gotta remind that. DePaul swept the team. But yeah, I think that is a solid way to go about it. And then you could use your mid-level exception on a sharpshooter, which I'm trying to see if there are any sharpshooters that are going to be on the market this year. Tim Hardaway Jr., but kind of made a name in Detroit this past season. Luke Kennard from the Grizzlies.
Mm.
Um, Yeah, I mean, sharpshooting. Malik Beasley had an amazing year, but I think he's definitely going back to Detroit. Nikhil Alexander Walker, who I didn't even realize was a free agent coming up this year.
Mm.
But yeah, those are some guys that you could look at for some 3-point shooting. Gary Trent Jr. had that really huge game in the Pacers Milwaukee series that we saw where he lit it up from the 3-point line. These are some guys that you could maybe use your mid-level exception on. Some veteran minimum guys you could maybe add. Landry Shamet could maybe be
Yeah.
something to look at just to bring in some 3-point shooting. These are all from shooting guard positions for forward. Duncan Robinson, if he opts out of his contract, which I don't think he will, could maybe be somebody. Um, yeah, from the forward position, it's kind of tough. There's not really a lot of 3-point shooting.
Yeah.
So I think if you could, if you don't make a trade, you just keep your team how it is right now. You draft the second and the fourth overall pick. So you get a Thomas or second and 14th overall pick. You get Dylan Harper and you get Thomas Sorbear. I think
Hmm.
that mid-level exception that you could use on a guy like Bruce Brown gives you something on the defensive end as well. Tim Hardaway Jr. just a sharpshooter if he's really on it, but he's can be inconsistent at times. Or Luke Kennard. These are all really good options. So, what do you think, Eric? Do you think a Luke Kennard, a Bruce Brown, Tim Hardaway, or Malik Beasley? If you could get any of those guys, who would be your number one
I
choice?
think I'm gonna go Tim Hardaway.
Tim Hardaway Jr.
Yeah.
He's
I don't
got
know.
playoff experience, been on a couple different teams.
Yeah, he's probably the guy I've seen play the most out of those names. And honestly, I feel like he's a guy we can just plug in and he'll give us what we need as
Mhm.
far as like the 3-point shooting and stuff. That's a guy I'd probably pick.
Gives you some positional size as well. The only thing with Tim Hardaway that I look at is at times he can be really inconsistent, but
Hmm.
when he's on, he's on. When he's hitting them shots, he can get hot. And only thing with Tim Hardaway Jr. and Malik Beasley is Detroit built a culture this past season behind JB Bickerstaff. I think those are two guys that maybe you could see go back to Detroit. But I think even if you don't get either one of those guys and you end up with a Luke Kennard, a Bruce Brown Jr., or Karis LeVert, even he's a really solid scorer
Yeah.
on the bench. Maybe not at the level of 3-point shooting as a Luke Kennard or Tim Hardaway Jr. Those are all super solid options that you could use your mid-level exception on, and then some lower guys that you can look at for some minutes to just maybe give you some off the bench with that veteran minimum. And then for the center position, say you don't draft Thomas Bear or Derek Queen, they're not available, and you
Hmm.
decide to use your mid-level exception on the center position. The center position is a tough position
Yeah.
this coming off season. Brooke
Not many, yeah.
Brooke Lopez is at the top. Clint Capella, Miles Turner, all those guys are at the top. Nas Reed has that player option, but he wants to get paid. I don't think
Yeah.
I don't think he's going to be available for the Spurs. I think he's just going to be worth too much money. Steven Adams, though, sitting
Steven
there,
Adams was a guy I was looking at before we
could
went
use your
out and I
mid-level
think
exception on a Steven Adams, who amazing
maybe
rebounder,
he got a couple more years, so yeah.
amazing rebounder off the bench. We saw for Houston this past season, whenever Şengün was out, he came in and was just an instant impact. Arguably the best offensive rebounder in basketball right now. That could be somebody, and you look for 3-point shooting at the 14th overall pick. You go for a guy like Carter Bryant or Nick Clifford, who is in a more of a win now
Yep.
position, or you go for a project player like Rasheed Fleming, who could become a guy like a Kevin Durant-esque, Jason Tatum-esque player. His player comp right now is Obi Toppin, which I don't really like. I think he's much more of a shot creator than Obi Toppin.
Yeah. I'm a big fan of Obi Toppin though. I think honestly he's like a well he's really exciting to watch for sure. But
He's definitely super exciting to watch. Maybe some other guys, if you if you go for a vet minimum, Mason Plumlee, he got maybe another year left where he could be
Yeah.
solid. Luke Cornett is a free agent. He showed that he is definitely worth his value. He's going to get paid this offseason. I think he might make a little bit more than the Spurs are willing to offer him as a backup center. Thomas Bryant, we're both from the Rochester area. Thomas Bryant, Rochester guy. Would love
Yep.
to see him in San Antonio. Uh,
That'd be pretty cool.
guy, pretty good rebounder. He's nothing like crazy, but could definitely be somebody that you see the Spurs going after. He's a good locker room guy, and yeah, I mean, the Spurs are in a great position, I think, any way they go, to be honest. If you decide to lean more towards still being a young team using both of your draft picks, you have a position where you could still jump up into a play-in playoff position, even with a super young team, or you are in a win now position, having that second overall pick and being able to make a move to a Giannis or a Kevin Durant or somebody that's a bigger name. I mean, it's really tough to predict what the Spurs are going to do, and
Yeah, we have so many options.
this is just a guide. This is nothing that we say
Yeah.
is 100%. And even Erik being a Spurs fan, I mean, you can't predict what they're going to do because they're in such a crazy position that we've kind of really never seen before. Even with the
Yeah.
Mavericks, that they're in another position where we've never seen them. They make a lot of trades to go older, but then they get the first overall pick. So they're in
Mm.
another position where you can't really predict what they're going to do. But final question, I got a couple more questions before we end off the show. One question, do you think Giannis Antetokounmpo is going to get moved this offseason?
Actually, I don't feel like he is going to get traded. I think there's going to be some offers for sure. And I just don't think, I just feel like the Bucks are going to do something to keep him. That might involve a trade, getting someone else. But yeah, I actually don't think that he's going to be traded.
Yeah, biggest thing with Giannis, obviously that whole thing came out where he's exploring his options. Now, for me, I think that Giannis making that move to say go to the front office and say he's going to explore his options was just kind of to put them in a position to make a win now move.
Hmm.
We're in a championship window. We have Damian Lillard, who's going to miss most of the year, but when he comes back, he's still going to be Damian Lillard. We need to
Yep.
win now moves. And also, Giannis has continuously said throughout his career that he wants to see more European players in big markets. Now, San Antonio, a great organization, great
It's
team,
small market for
but they're
sure.
not a huge market.
Yeah.
Houston, again, another really solid team with a lot of history, just not a huge market. Some of the big
Hmm.
markets, the Knicks, but they would have to kind of break up their core that they just went to the
Yeah.
conference
Knicks,
finals
Lakers
with.
already kind of have a thing. So
Yeah, Brooklyn, I guess, it's still New York City, but Brooklyn is always going to be looked at as the little brother to the Knicks.
yeah,
Miami is a possibility, but also you got to
be
think
interesting.
the Bucks are going to want a package that is worth Giannis in return. And that package could dismantle a team and take them out of a position of being a playoff team, even with Giannis. Like if you're the
Mm.
Bucks and the Heat come to you and they're not offering you Tyler Hero and Bam Adebayo, you're probably going to say no to that trade because
Yeah,
you're definitely going to want one of them,
probably
but
like a Hawkes or
yeah, you'd want both of them if you're giving up a top three player in the league. So that's a tough position to go with. And then finally, just thank you, Erik. Thank you for coming on the show. We'll
yeah, of course.
bring you back after the season is done. See what the Spurs do and just keep posted. Got any shout outs, Erik, before you go?
Um, Shout out NC State Wolfpack, shout out Will Wade. Um, yeah, you'll see us in the tournament next year for sure.
Same
NC
thing with
State.
DePaul. DePaul and NC State, they're coming for the next year.
I, but what has DePaul done this offseason?
They've made so we got some pretty good size. We got a star from Tulane, was a 4 or 5 star recruit out of high school.
Yeah,
Lead,
Tulane was pretty good last year, I think, right?
he was the leading scorer for Tulane, Caleb Banks. Him and CJ Gunn, one of our stars, both out of Indiana. Got some
Okay.
size. Got the 7'2" guy out of St. John's. Uh, yeah, I think DePaul is in the right um, direction moving forward.
Okay.
Same thing with NC State. I mean, Will Wade led McNeese State to 2 straight
Yeah,
NCAA tournaments, beat Clemson on that amazing first half that they had. So
it's
yeah, both
crazy.
teams are moving forward. Obviously, NC State from lat to not this last March Madness, but the one prior, DJ Burns. What's your boy DJ Burns been up to? You seen him on campus at all?
Now he's in Korea playing Korean basketball league, so that's
Ah,
where he's better at. Um, but what's his name? Amir Khan was my buddy actually. I met him at the gym like the last week of school. We saw him there. So yeah, that's kind of it that I have to say.
all right. Eric, what's your Instagram so people can go out there and follow you?
It's just ERIK and then underscore 2359.
All right. I'll make sure to put it in the description of this
Oh
video.
no.
Thank you, Eric, for being on Beyond the Scoreboard. This has been an amazing episode, a transitional episode, because this will be more of the off season, not being here at the DePaul campus in the next couple of weeks. But thank you, Eric. We'll be having some other guests on for their team's off season guide. King's off season guide will be coming soon. So we'll see.
Oof.
But again, thank you, Eric. Any last words?
Oh yeah. No, I appreciate you for having me. Good luck with your finals. They're coming up, yeah.
Actually, don't got any finals. Just got one final paper, and that's it.
Well, good luck with it.
Thank you, Eric. And then
Thanks for
thank you
having
for
me.
everyone listening. This has been Beyond the Scoreboard, and I'm your host, Michael Lyons.